a mega ET Now exclusive. It's a big one, ladies and gentlemen. We understand from our sources that SoftBank and one more party are on the verge of finalizing a massive 9,600 crore rupee deal with the Piramal Group. In fact, we're being told that a team of nearly 30 people from Japan, from SoftBank, are at Piramal's office in Mumbai working on this deal, which could be announced soon.
Welcome back. Here on the India Development Debate, we have been constantly campaigning for solutions to India's water crisis, and a lot of the times we focus on what governments and policy makers need to do. Yes, the primary responsibility of making sure India's water needs are fulfilled lies with governments, but it also lies with you. Today we will talk about what you and I can do as individuals and how each step can make a difference. To discuss this, we're joined today by water conservation expert S Vishwanath. I'm speaking with Himanshu Thakkar, coordinator South Asia Network on Dams, Rivers and People. And we're also joined in the studios by Meera Gandhi, founder and CEO of the Giving Back Foundation. Welcome to all of you and thanks for speaking with us today. Vishwanath, let me start with you. You've been on a few of the shows we've been doing on India Development Debate, talking about what governments can do, talking about policies, but let's come to what you and I can do. And this is also part of what the government pushes through, a lot of ads, advertorials, through Mann Ki Baat, etc. What are the basic things that people watching this can think of in their everyday lives once they realize how big the crisis is?
Well, there are some simple things that individuals can do. One of them is to make sure that they have water efficient fixtures, taps, showers, flushes, washing machines, dishwashers, whichever ones we use, there are a lot of water efficient ones available and that should be used. The second thing to think about is if you can do rainwater harvesting, collecting rain, storing it or recharging the aquifer and reusing it. The third thing to do is to look at wastewater reuse. Simple things like grey water, which comes from the kitchen and the bath, can easily be reused for non-potable purpose. The fourth thing to do is to look at waste management. We sometimes underestimate what we do with solid waste, but if we take care of solid waste properly, then it does not pollute the environment and our water sources. And the final thing to do is to look at our diet. Our diets send a very powerful signal to water users in the agricultural sector, which is the single largest consumer of water. And if we are careful about locally produced food, which uses less water, for example, like millets, and avoid sugar, then that would be a positive contribution to the water security of the country.
Some absolutely fantastic points. We've been asking you constantly for feedback on who the water champions are, and there are many. There are many who have been doing great work. For example, there's a teacher in Saurashtra who uses soil water to grow trees. Water that is being used after washing utensils, and he's using it to grow trees, etc. The challenges, and Himanshu, let me come to you here. The challenge is when, all of these points that Vishwanath has talked about, when ordinary people are watching this, they're not quite sure on how to go about it. Do you know if there's rainwater harvesting in your locality? Maybe yes, no. How do you start? What are the first steps to begin?
Well, I think the first step is to just try and understand what are the kinds of rainwater harvesting. So broadly there are two kinds. Vishwanath is expert on this, he can actually shed better light. But basically there are two kinds. One is where you store the rainwater into an underground or on the ground tank. or the other way, which is little more easier and less capital intensive, is to allow that water to recharge into the ground through a recharge well. And this can be done actually if you are, for example, living in a society, then you can push their society to do it on a common land, say for example on a park, on a road, or through the stormwater drain if it is not contaminated. So, you know, these are little easier way to do it, because then water directly goes into the ground, which is then enters the common property pool, and that's possibly most cost effective and efficient way to do it. I think in addition to what Vishwanath has mentioned, I think I would also like to add that we also need to understand where does our water come from, and where does the sewage that we create goes from, and see that it functions, that whole system, how does it function, and what role you can play in ensuring it functions properly. And lastly, I think we also have a role to play in ensuring that the government, what the government does, because the government is the biggest actor in water sector. And what the government does is the right thing, and when government does something wrong, then also raise voice and oppose such wrong things. So this is also part of every citizen's duty, I feel.
Absolutely. And you're seeing that more and more, especially online, where people are pointing out where there is very obvious wastage of water. But are we going out and telling people that, you know, don't do this? And let me come to Meera Gandhi here. And Meera, great to have you in our studios.
Thank you.
So you do a lot of philanthropic work.
Yes.
How can that contribute to something like this? Because right now the outreach is one way. It comes from the government that puts out ads, etc., tells people, you know, shut your taps. But what can you do to go one step further?
Well, the big advantage of philanthropic organizations, religious organizations, socially organized groups is that they have a direct reach to the people, and they have a huge influence on being able to guide people to do things that are socially and economically viable, such as take a short shower, be more careful, make sure your taps are closed, just things that will, the trickle effect that will have a huge effect. There have been organizations that I've worked with, for example, Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s organization called Waterkeeper Alliance that actually saved the Hudson River. They joined together with people who had boats, and they actually made sure that the Hudson River was devoid of plastic. Another organization that's a private organization that's been very successful is on the Hudson River, and they make sure that they make deals with the government to create parks along sides of rivers and lakes to make sure that the land is not denuded by construction or obstruction, so that it holds the water in place.
Some background there. Of course, Meera is based in the United States, and she's talking about some of the NGOs there which have done great work. In fact, Vishwanath, a lot of work has been done by NGOs here as well, whether it's the whole campaign to fix leaky taps in people's houses, to make sure every drop is saved, or to work with villages. But the problem is that the scale is too small right now. The scale is too small. I mean, we're hoping to reach out to more people with programs like this, but it hasn't yet become the kind of huge campaign it needs to be, isn't it?
Well, let's look at the glass as half full. In my city alone, in Bangalore, activists have stepped forward to work with communities on restoration of lakes, restoration of rivers. They've gone to the media, they've gone to the government, and they've gone to the courts to demand that the lakes be cleaned up. And that's been having a snowballing effect. We're now seeing the rejuvenation of many lakes in Bangalore, though we have problems with the big ones. But even in the big ones, activists have managed to persuade the NGT, for example, to step in and to make sure that it's cleaned. And may I just add one word? We have started a website called bengaluru.urbanwaters.in, which brings together ideas and service providers in the city of Bangalore to provide these water efficient solutions. We could have the same website for every city and town in India, and that could link up NGOs, activists, service providers, and ideas and laws which are in place for those towns and cities. And citizens could take a look at it and do things on their own.
Okay, Meera, you wanted to come in on that point on what NGOs can do, and right now in India there's some NGOs doing great work.
Yes.
The problem is with scale.
Exactly. And on this question of scale, what I wanted to share was something that Israel has done very successfully. They did a 5-step program which has been extremely successful. They started deep irrigation conserving water, which is lost to evaporation.
Yeah.
They started something called the Shaftan method, which uses wastewater for irrigation and agriculture. And today 60% of the agricultural water comes from this Shaftan method. They are also the leaders in desalination, and by 2025, 40% of their drinking water will come from desalination. A very innovative Israeli company called Watergen, it's a new company, it produces water from the air. And 16% of the drinking water is going to come from Watergen, which is so interesting. And the last thing Israel has done very successfully is they've started the Terratronic sensors, and they fitted these Terratronic sensors to plants, to irrigations, to parks, to monitor exactly how much water is needed, so they don't overwater parks and irrigations and gardens, and it's worked extremely well. They've really solved their water crisis.
No, so Israel is, of course, sort of a hot topic of discussion. Himanshu, I want you to come in on this. The thing is that India is such a large country. It's such a large country with such a different topography, which makes our issue a little more complex, isn't it?
Yes, it does, but I think in that context it's very important to remember that if we need to understand the things in a policy perspective also.
Yeah.
See, look at the urban water sector today. The urban water sector has a huge footprint. Its footprint not only in terms of demanding lot of water from outside, but it's also creating lot of pollutants, which has a further snowballing effect. Now, the whole urban water sector, the footprint is increasing. It's already huge and it's increasing very fast. But the whole urban water sector is operating in complete policy vacuum. There is no national urban water policy or any state urban water policy. So, if in absence of policy and democratic governance decision making, we could be easily waylaid by, attractive propositions from Israel and Germany and US and so on. I think what we need to understand from our own context that for example, the government has a program called Smart City Program. But have you heard of a water smart city? Can a city be smart without being water smart? But we don't know. So, we have been saying that India urgently needs a national urban water policy which will guide the various water subsectors of urban water sector and provide best practices and definition of a water smart city, whether it will include, for example, water supply, sewage, pollution, flood management, water bodies management, river management. So various aspects of the urban water needs to be, and lastly, most importantly, the urban water needs to be firstly using within the urban area the resources available before demanding water from outside the urban areas.
No,
so urban areas needs to ensure they harvest the rain, they recharge the groundwater, they recycle the sewage. What Vishwanath said in the beginning.
But you know what
it
my
has
point
to happen
is?
At the
What my
urban
point is, Himanshu,
level.
right now we're hoping that people will get this kind of a inspiration from within themselves, become involved. No one is really honestly going to do that until they feel the pinch. And the fact is, and Vishwanath, let me come to you on this point. The problem with, it's not like there is no water crisis in urban India. The fact is that it's on sale, and people who can afford to buy it then no longer feel the pinch, which is why that kind of push to get your act together isn't there. Is that where government intervention needs to come in? Some kind of incentive to actually go ahead and, put rainwater harvesting facilities in your societies, for example.
Well, I've been fortunate to be in Bangalore, where activists have actually found a seat at the table where policy is made. For example, we have a rainwater harvesting bylaw in the city, which had citizens groups also intervening to make sure that it got done. And about 120,000 buildings are harvesting rainwater. We have a wastewater policy for the government of Karnataka, and especially for Bangalore, where 770 million liters of treated wastewater will go to the hinterland to provide irrigation for farmers. We are using every drop of wastewater which gets out of our city, formally or informally. So there are certain things where citizens groups have to find a seat at the table of policy, of legislation, and push for it. And good governments are those which will listen to this kind of proactive suggestions from citizens and include it as part of the bigger picture, bigger framework of managing water.
Okay. Okay, Meera, you want to come in here with an example of California, which has faced a water crisis. We've seen it in Cape Town as well.
Yes.
A year ago.
Yes.
And where people have actually come together. And the sad fact is people come together and start doing things when they face the crunch.
And we have to, I'll come to California, but we have to understand the crunch in India, because India has 16% of the world's population and only 4% of the water allocation resources. So, I mean, already you can see we're 4 times short the water we need. So, India really has to look at the crisis. Coming to California,
I
where
don't agree with that. I think this is the wrong way to put it.
Well, I just want to talk, thank
Yeah.
you. I just want to talk about California very quickly. In California, when there was a drought, people got together and decided that they would wash their cars once a week, and it was purely a civic-driven measure, and they really staved the drought, and it came from within the people, and it came at a very grassroots level. So it's a clear example where people can come together to solve a problem if they have a like-minded.
Okay, you need to feel, or you need to realize the fact that the problem is coming for you sooner than later, and not wait for it to come into a stage of a full-blown crisis. We are hoping that that kind of awareness will spread. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the show this evening. We're completely out of time, and we want to thank our viewers for joining us as well.
ET Now exclusive. It's a big one, ladies and gentlemen. We understand from our sources that SoftBank and one more party are on the verge of finalizing a massive 9,600 crore rupee deal with the Piramal Group. In fact, we're being told that a team of nearly 30 people from Japan, from SoftBank, are at Piramal's office in Mumbai working on this deal, which could be announced soon.